We're ready. Shall we go? Good evening. We're about to begin. It's customary for the council, however, to recognize individuals who've reached sometimes their last milestone in life. But there's no one who has been associated with the city who fits that definition this week. However, consistent with the practice of applauding a woman who recently reached her, what was it, 103rd or 104th birthday, we have two individuals associated with the city that we'd like to recognize tonight. Jacob Burridge, which is Ancient Mariner, who has an association to Newburyport. I'll get to that in a second, is the oldest living World War II Seabee. He is 101 years old. The father of Lois Honegger.
Oh.
And Margaret Helen Connell, born February 14th in 1919. She had her 100th birthday February 14th, and I promised her I'd get her into the public record. So we don't have to be silent. Let's just applaud them, if you don't mind. With that said, hope you'll join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I should kind of like that one better where we're clapping rather than...
I'll ask the clerk to call the order, please.
Roll call for the Council of February 25th. Councilor Tantar.
Present.
Councilor Vogel.
Present.
Councilor Z.
Present.
Councilor Devlin.
Here.
Councilor Earl.
Present.
Councilor Eigenman.
Here.
Councilor Junta.
Present.
Councilor Khan.
Present.
Councilor O'Brien. Here. Councilor Shan.
Present.
Councilor Connell.
Present.
We
Are there any
have...
late file items?
There are no official late file items. There are three items on the councilor's desk. There's a pay-as-you-throw map and a spreadsheet associated therewith. There's a breakout of fees that was put on your desk at the request of the chairman of the Budget and Finance, fees related to the rail trail. And there's a memo on safe routes to school. The reason that's on your desk is it was copied one side only, and it was a double copy as it came in, so the packet only had one out of every other page. Now you have the whole thing. That's it, Mr. President.
That makes sense.
All right. Someone's not mic'd up. All right. Is there any action required on these? These are just for public information purposes.
Not really, Mr. President.
Very well, so let's get to public comment.
You? Just going to grab everyone, sign what needs to sign. Looks like 8 people.
All right, we have 8 people tonight. I'm going to remind people, as I do most weeks, that this is a 2-minute public comment period. If you're going to speak, your remarks must be limited to something that is on our agenda. If it's not on our agenda, perhaps it will be in the future, but save your comments for the time when it is. The first speaker will be Art Currier, 100 State Street. Mr. Currier, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I won't take them all. I just want to speak to the presentation that Molly's going to make tonight about the zero waste task force effort. And I request that any question that you have that's not answered in this extensive package of material, that you email the question to Molly so it can be considered with the same diligence and thoughtfulness that every other question we identified was, in the interest of the mayor's work and your work and the community's work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sam Marabi of, I believe it's 7 Brown Square.
Thank you.
Dr. Marabi.
I have all these notes, but I'm afraid my phone's going to die in the middle of this, so I'm just going to freelance this. So I'm also speaking about the Waste Task Force proposal and the Pay-As-You-Go program. Briefly, my experience has been in Worcester for 5 years with a similar program, and I want the council to consider extra costs that have occurred there. when considering this program to either augment the program or consider a more creative type of program. Costs include dealing with dumping, which is a symptom of lack of compliance, which can occur because people can't afford the program, because they can't afford an extra $8 a month or a week, and are too proud to come here in front of a microphone and say that they can't afford it. Also, people that are disabled or have a hard time throughout their day in general can't manage consolidating all their trash in these bags that we will all end up doing. As a manner of saving that generally people do with these bags. Both of those groups should be exempt, in my opinion, because sanitation is a right. People need to be able to keep their homes clean. Also, lack of compliance leads to a general lack of hygiene in the community. Dumping becomes an issue and has been an issue in all of these communities that have pay-as-you-go bags as the exclusive way of disposing. So please consider that. Also consider possibly doing month exemptions so that people can do spring cleaning. Everyone needs to get rid of things in their home for your health. You might notice things in your basement like paint cans or other things that are harder to dispose because you just haven't been managing to get that out because it's hard to dispose. That can also happen with general trash. Be really brief, but maybe one barrel free per household instead of one bag. People need to dispose of diapers, adult diapers, pet litter, a lot of other things that can easily take up one bag, but people need to get rid of it for their own health. I've spoken with Molly, and I would encourage that people have a more critical analysis of this. There hasn't been any studies on this that I know of that have been published that are independent, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moravia. Jane Snow.
Good evening. Again, I'm speaking on the zero waste, and I'm a little confused because back last year we had an uproar with a lot of people coming about trash, and we were trying to figure out whose condo got trash pickup and who didn't. And at that point in time, during the mayor's update, we were told that the mayor was a strong proponent against paying for trash or pay as you throw. And now I read this report that was online in your packet, and it said that the city had made a declaration and that we committed about doing this program. And I just kind of think we've put the cart before the horse. Normally when we have safe routes to schools or any of that, we have resident meetings, and people have a chance to hear the presenters. And I know that Molly is very passionate, and she is very helpful when you ask her about questions of how you get rid of things and so forth and so on. She's done a great job about the electric lights, and I appreciate that effort. But I think that, again, residents need a right to speak up. I think the gentleman just before me made excellent things that I didn't even think about that people need to get rid of. So, again, I wish that this was a presentation that was going in front of the public and before the report was made, out to the public, that the residents had a chance to digest it, speak about it, ask questions about it, and then this to me should be more of a summation. So again, I don't want to diminish a tremendous amount of time and effort, and I have great respect for these people, but I also think, I agree that the older you get, the harder it is, and you can't be in your car running trash all over the place, yet we have to come up with a solution, and I think we have a lot of creative people that could come up with some great ideas. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Bryn Stevens.
I am also discussing the pay-as-you-throw program that's being proposed. I'm actually, I moved to Newburyport from Merrimack, so I'm familiar with this program. And what I saw when I lived there was, not only is it a hassle, I mean, it's just on a Tuesday night at midnight, you don't have the blue bag, you're not throwing away your trash the next day. And and I think Merrimack also had trouble with the companies that were running the programs. First, we went from yellow tags, and I don't know if it cost the town money to work with that organization, and then we went to the blue bags, and it was really difficult, I think, for our town to kind of to work with these different organizations. I mean, if you work with, let's say, the city decides to work with Waste Zero, which is out of South Carolina, we have to pay them a fee, a service, right, for each bag, and then what the services they provide, and they're not even recycling, they're not collecting the trash, we're just paying for these blue bags. So I guess I wonder, will we lose money on this program? Do we know enough about who we'll be working with? And I think that, it becomes dangerous when the city pushes the burden on the individual to dispose of their own waste. I think, especially when it's a public health issue, sanitation is nothing like, paying for electricity, paying for water. So I would love to know more, love to hear more where it's going.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
I realize that I neglected to give the addresses. Jane Snow was on 9 Coffin Street, and Bryn Stevens, 195 High Street. Sorry about that lack of clarity. Michael Underwood, 21 Beck Street.
Yeah, good evening. I'm also here to speak about the zero waste policy. I am very much against this proposal. One of the things I look at is I think it's actually putting an unfair burden on us as the taxpayers of Newburyport, where we are already, frankly, paying a very good fair share of our income towards taxes within Newburyport. I know myself, I pay $8,000 a year in property taxes. I just got my excise tax bill in the mail yesterday on my 12-year-old car, which is $100, give or take. So I believe that and frankly, I also believe that we have a very nice surplus within our budget. I'm all for reducing the amount of waste, but I would look at other ways that we could do that. Could we up the way that we recycle? Could we put more curbs on plastic? It's those kind of things that I think will have a bit greater impact versus charging people to throw away garbage when frankly, I feel like we're already paying for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Now, this next person, your name I simply cannot read. I believe it begins with a C. 8 High Street is the street address. Is it Oulette?
That's me.
Okay. Please identify yourself. Please.
Yes, hi, my name is Greg Calling. I'm a former resident of Newburyport, and I now live in Exeter, New Hampshire, which has a trash pay-as-you-go system, which is fine. But I'm here to actually speak about the Custom House Maritime Museum, and I'm here to support their effort to secure funding for the CPC money that was approved by the CPC. And I just wanted to emphasize the importance of the Custom House Maritime Museum and the importance of that historic building. And it's really an important part of the civic identity of Newburyport. And I hope everybody votes in favor of providing funding for their roof repair project. Thanks.
Thank you. Pam Ketchum, 15 Washington Street.
Thank you. I'm also going to talk about the Waste Task Force. And again, I appreciate all the efforts that went into it, but I am not in favor of the recommendation to limit each household to 1 bag of trash per week and to charge for anything more than that. I do think that trash collection should be included in the taxes we already pay. I understand that the cost for recycling has increased dramatically. The report said that trash costs are increased about 23% and recycling 80%. Yet the program addresses the trash only and the recycling remains the same. It doesn't appear to be a lack of recycling that's an issue, but maybe my neighbors are just better at it than other parts of the city. But I really don't think the one size or 1 bag per household fits all or even a majority. One bag for a single person in a house or condo may work. However, one bag for a family of 4 or more clearly doesn't. What if you have kids in diapers? Other people talked about other scenarios. Is it really equitable, which is one of the goals, that you have to pay more? In a lot of instances, if someone has a larger family, they have a larger home or a larger condo unit, and therefore they're paying more taxes. I'm not suggesting we implement a system that takes into account how much each household pays in taxes and issues trash bags, but rather that one bag per household does not seem feasible or equitable. The city has a lot of condos and townhouses, so the task force is proposing 8 units as the threshold for trash pickup. I don't know if this is a change from the current practice, and if it is, are they meant to get a dumpster? Do they have room? How much of an additional cost is it? And would they still pick up their recycling? Would that just be for trash? For those with 2 to 7 units, which there are plenty of those out there, which is what I do, which everyone puts their trash bags into a couple of bins, we put them out curbside. There are 3 units in where I live, and we put our trash into a couple of bins. But in this proposal, we would all have to manage our one bag. So most people don't take out their trash once a week. You may have smelly scraps, or you may have smaller trash bags, again, and you're managing to a bigger trash bag. So how would this work? We all have to have our own trash bin outside, and that's where our bag is, and we have to manage that. A single family, that would work fine, but the larger the unit, the harder it would be. You have 5, 6, 7 units, and how are you going to manage your one bag of trash? And again, it shouldn't be sitting in your house. How are we also going to do compliance? If someone puts an unapproved bag out in the bin, theirs or their neighbors, is there a fine? Is there a warning? What are the costs? So again, I'm not in favor of the one bag per household. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Scow, 75 High Street.
Hi, good evening. I'm also here to speak about the zero waste policy, which I think it's a laudable goal to have zero waste, but I think it's, I also, like Mr. Underwood, really feel like I'm already paying for my trash removal. Same thing happened as I was walking over here. I saw my excise tax bill come in the mail. Last week I got my water bill that, despite the fact that we put in measures to reduce water usage, has gone up. I cleared my sidewalk. That's a public sidewalk, an unfunded mandate from the city. My son got on the bus this morning. I had to pay a user fee because at second grade he's expected to walk 1.67 miles to school. And on February 1st I pay my property taxes. I feel that we already pay enough in taxes in Newburyport that our trash removal should be taken care of. I think secondly, as someone else alluded to, that it does discriminate against families. I'm a family of 6. There's no way we can have one trash bag. And we already live in a bigger house and pay more property taxes because we're a large family. And I think, as the first gentleman alluded to, there are a lot of unintended consequences. I think as the city saw when they banned plastic bags, all of a sudden we had a dog poop problem because people aren't going to pay to have for plastic bags to pick up their dog poop. It just doesn't happen. I think with trash, you're going to see littering and you're going to see dumping, whether it be in the woods, whether it be in the businesses downtown in their dumpsters, or whether it be in their neighbors' garbage. I think you're going to see a dirtier Newburyport. So I think, like the others before me, I think I'm opposed to having to pay for trash removal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our public comment period. Thank you for adhering to the 2-minute rule, almost all of you. We're going to proceed to a presentation by Molly Ettenborough, who's our Sustainability Director, about the aforementioned
Yeah, please.
solid waste program that's being recommended by the ad hoc committee. Molly, you're all set.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, councilors, for having me this evening, and thank you for your time. I first want to say, before we dive into the presentation, that there are 3 important perspectives that we need to keep in mind. First, when I started here under Mayor Moak, he asked me to look into pay-as-you-throw. We looked at what the city was doing with our contract, and it was a lump sum contract. That means our collection, hauling, and disposal were all together in one. We had no idea how much trash we were generating. We had no idea what we were paying for disposal. We had no idea what we were paying for collection and transportation. Since that time, we said, how can we possibly charge for trash if we don't know what we're charging for? So since that time, we've come up with many strategies and many programs that you'll hear more about in a little while. We've worked really hard for that, and the recycling office, including Mayor Holliday, have been steadfast in not going the route of pay-as-you-throw, and I think that's what one of the speakers alluded to earlier, turning it into a utility bill, unless absolutely necessary, and until all options we have looked at and uncovered. Second, we are not blazing a new trail here. There are 154 cities and towns in Massachusetts that have this kind of program, and they are all succeeding. They've done well. Merrimack still has their program. Worcester still has their program. I think Worcester's had it for 27 years. And Worcester has a dumping problem, but the dumping problem doesn't relate to the pay-as-you-throw program. They have a very diverse city. They have colleges. They have a lot of rental properties. They have a lot of other issues that are going on. So to blame it on just pay-as-you-throw is not accurate. But we've looked at a lot of solutions, and you'll hear about those tonight. But also, someone alluded to the mayor's declaration for 30% or 70% reduction by 2030. We also, in our city's master plan that you all passed, talked about this. We talked about cost reduction for trash, and we talked about looking at programs like pay-as-you-throw. So I'm doing my job. You told me to do that, and that's what we're doing. So we've looked at this over the past 6 months, spent many, many hours looking at options. Over the past 10 years, we've been implementing programs and processes to try and help reduce waste. We say to people, if you want to be zero waste in Newburyport, you can be, and it won't be that costly. We have a lot of options for people. We're very lucky. And lastly, but equally important, this isn't just about costs. This is about responsibility. This is the city's responsibility, each person's responsibility, and our future responsibility to maintain costs and reduce environmental and health impacts. There is a trash problem, not just here, but not just in Newburyport, but in the world. And those include the generation and disposal ignorance that people have about trash. Where does it go? Marketplace uncertainties we have no control over, and running out of space to bury and burn trash. We are running out of space in this region. We can't continue this. We can't maintain status quo unless we start making changes. So I just wanted to say that, and now I go to I think I have to bring this with me. The task force charter was formed at the mayor's request last spring to assess the rising costs of Newburyport's solid waste and recycling programs and to make recommendations. So that's what we've done over the last 6 months. We have a great team of people, and we've looked at cost containment as defined in the master plan, which I mentioned, what kinds of waste reduction programs we can enact, and making sure that everything is consistent and simple and transparent. We have a number of different users in the city. We have condos, we have apartments, we have large buildings. Whenever a building is built, the planning department says you're not going to be getting city services, but yet many of them do because they went to their city councilor or they went to the mayor at the time or they went to somebody and asked for city service and are getting it. And I think if you're paying taxes, you should have that city service. So I agree with that, but it's just not consistent at this point. Our task force members are listed here, but we tried to invite stakeholders in the community with various perspectives. Sorry. We have city councilors, we have planning board people, we have high school students, and we have people from the health department. We had a DEP representative. Thank you, Matt. Oh, okay. And we had apartment and condo owners as well as someone from the board of council. Thank you. Sorry about this.
You want me to click it?
Sure.
No, that won't work.
Yes, you can do that. Can you do that?
I'll be happy to click.
Okay, thank you. So rising costs, we know that disposal options are shrinking. We are now shipping waste outside of Massachusetts. We're shipping it to New Hampshire, we're shipping it to New York and Ohio, in addition to the incinerators that we use to burn trash, and our landfills are going away. I think in the original packet that I sent to the city clerk, there's a lot more detail, so if you want some of that detail, we can send that to you as well. There's a big drop in landfill capacity in 2021. And regional incinerators are continually at 100% capacity. Last year when we went out to bid for our collection and hauling transportation contract and our disposal contract, we asked if Merrimack could join us. That was Amesbury and Newburyport. And they said, nope, we have no room for any more. And they had already rejected seven other towns. They kept us because we had a previous contract with them. But we begged and we asked them if they please could accept a Merrimack and if there was economies of scale. And because Merrimack is so small, they did allow them. But that was a
Oh, maybe
big...
you should move that. Speak into the microphone.
Oh, okay. Sorry. There is a moratorium on building more incinerators in the state of Massachusetts. Nobody wants those in their backyard. So there aren't going to be any more built. The traditional incinerators, I'm sure you've seen them on 495. They're large. They do emit pollution. So where is it going to go if it's not going to be going there? And landfills are closing, as we know, in our own town. The recycling market, we have no control over what's going on there. The recycling market is the prices. We used to be paid $10 a ton. This year, since July, we've been paying anywhere from $70 to $89 a ton for recycling, and we have no control over that. And we had cost increases for collection, hauling, and transportation. That's Mellow. Their costs initially went up 36%, and the mayor and I met with them on a number of occasions, working really hard to get their prices down and making changes to the contract, and we got them down to 23%, but they're still a lot higher than they used to be. So why should we change? As you just heard, we have a budget increase on average of 32%, depending on what the recycling market is doing and what we're paying. We've committed to waste reduction, as I mentioned earlier, both in our master plan and in the C40 Climate Mayor's plan. And then the state has reduction goals for us as well. Our practices and policies are inconsistent, and we really need to get those to be more consistent on who we serve. We serve some private roads. There are other private roads that don't get service. We serve some condo buildings, but other ones don't get it. So we really need to make sure that those practices are consistent and fair for all users, because, again, as I said earlier, I do think that residents that are paying taxes should have that service. The bill is very large. We're only talking about a small amount that would be covered by this bag program if selected. Obviously, recycling is more cost-effective than trash. And we're obviously committed to environmental stewardship. I think that's important to Newburyporters. So as I mentioned earlier, we've done a lot. This is not a program that we're saying, here it is. This is as one of the speakers was alluding to earlier, oh, this is just something that popped up and we want a chance. This is what we're doing. There's a lot of information. Amazingly, trash and recycling is very complicated, and it shouldn't be, but it is, because no one wants it in their backyard, and no one wants to deal with it. So it is very complicated, and it's really important that we go through a process. So this is the beginning of a process. This is just the start of it. There's going to be plenty of time for people to have input and plenty of time for people to give their thoughts and come up with creative ideas. This task force worked over the past 6 months a lot and looked at a lot of different options. So we have done a lot, and we had a zero waste pilot program that showed that waste can be reduced 30 to 60%, and most of that is through organics composting. We'd love to roll out an organics composting program citywide, but it's very expensive. It's about $300,000. We have people that are doing it on their own, and they're paying for it on themselves. We've created resources for reduction, reuse, and repair. We've expanded drop-off recycling options. If you haven't been to our recycling center lately, please come. We take a lot of material, and every month we fill that entire barn up with material. It's amazing. And we've conducted 2 recycling IQ programs. And we have a lot of education and enforcement. We give people as much information as we can possibly grind out of our office. We have online opportunities. We have recyclopedias. We have groups that we work with in town that are holding repair cafes. There's just a lot of opportunities for people to reduce their waste. So they don't have to have paint in their basement if they don't want to. We even now have a latex paint program where you used to have to dry it out with kitty litter. We have now a program that will take it and recycle it.
Wow.
So the task force looked at a lot of things. We looked at end user characteristics. That means we took the assessor's database, we broke it down by single-family homes, condos, apartments, different users, and put a cost to each one of those sectors. So we can actually say if we make changes, what the cost will be to the city's budget and what the cost would be to those individual owners. We have tools that we looked at through DEP. DEP was also on our task force, is on the task force, and we've looked at a lot of information from DEP as well as other cities and towns. Efforts of others. We looked at financial, environmental, and social impacts, and obviously the environmental and cost benefits. So our findings are that most municipalities in the state everyone's struggling with this. We know that 2 other cities in our area are looking at this as well. We're not the only ones. We know that if you look at your trash and try and manage it wisely, that it does reduce trash tonnage. And as you reduce your trash, recycling increases. As I said earlier, 154 towns have programs in Massachusetts. And we're only one of 7 communities in the DEP Northeast 2 district, which is 39 communities. I think in your packet it said in Massachusetts. That was wrong. It's 7 out of 39 communities that offer, that pick up trash mover for businesses and organizations. But there's only 2 Massachusetts municipalities that provide trash collection to multifamily, over 8, and that's Boston and Arlington. And Arlington is already looking at cutting that service. And Boston, it's too big. They can't handle it. It's not easy to do. So the task force came up with 4 options. And again, we are here to go through a process with the council and the committees and residents, and we want people's input. We want people's feedback. First one is status quo. We can stay as we are. And if we do that, then our costs will continue to climb. And we'll have inequitable trash pickup for people. Some people get upset that their neighbors put out a lot more than they do. We hear about that all the time. Secondly, option 2 is pay-as-you-throw. That's a full pay-as-you-throw program. That means everybody pays for every single bag that they put out. Thirdly is an annual household trash fee. That would be what a lot of towns do. They'll charge $100, $200, $300 a year. But again, that doesn't really address it favors high users. It doesn't really address the equitability issue. And then lastly, the recommendation of the committee is the first bag free program. And that does allow equity in trash services, encourages recycling, and it contains cities' costs. But it's not going to be easy if we did go that route. We know that. So in conclusion, increasing waste collection and disposal costs are inevitable. As you've seen, the task force proposes the first bag free, which we feel contains costs, reduces waste, and encourages responsible stewardship. And we're here to stay with our commitments of managing the budget, protecting our natural resources, and encouraging community participation. We want people to be involved in this process. So I am available for questions, maybe a couple now, but via email, anytime people want to call and meet. I know that we've gotten some questions prior to, and we put together a lot of information in your packet. You got some of the information in your packet now, but the city clerk's office has the full packet. The FAQs were extensive, and we worked really hard to try and make that more readable for everybody, and we tried to cover everyone's questions. I have sample bags if people want to see that. So,
Why don't we start with some questions from councilors, if you have any right now. Otherwise, we could refer this to committee, and the committee would hold meetings and question you a little more closely, and perhaps also the consultants or committee members that helped with that. But let's take a few questions from councilors now, if you have them. Councilor Zeid.
Just a couple questions on things you may be considered. So is a household the only way that you've found in other communities that measure a unit? So basically your unit of measure is essentially a household or a unit.
Right.
Is there any other model that you came across? So in other words, household doesn't really mean anything. It could be 10 people in a household or 1 person. Did you see anything else in your travels or your research that?
Well, it's weight. So that's how the waste industry is, by weight. So we can get a per household figure of pounds per household. So it's done by weight. Otherwise, we have no other measures besides that. I mean, we can, people that participated in the pilot, the zero waste pilot, we were able to figure out how much recycling, how much organics, and how much trash people had.
Okay, and then two other quick ones. Two was the program costs that you published here.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you're looking at the final column as the $196,000 is what
Yes.
falls out the bottom. That's the proposal you're making.
Correct.
How were the costs estimated? Was that based on speaking to the vendor or a vendor and saying,
Yes.
and then does that include any additional city costs, or it basically all goes to the vendor? Or
Yeah, the vendor, so that was speaking with Waste Zero, who someone else alluded to. Waste Zero is the only comprehensive service company that does this kind of program. You can purchase bags, but then it would be the city that would be responsible for getting those bags, supplying them, and talking to the stores and making sure all the stores were supplied with them. Waste Zero is a comprehensive program, but we did get our numbers from them, and we know what our costs are per bag, and all of the costs associated with that, whether it's mailing, customer service, manufacturing, stocking the shelves, all those things are covered in that price.
Last question is just on the composting program. So you mentioned $300,000 was the cost potentially.
If we did a citywide
If
program.
we did a citywide.
Right.
Did you guys crunch a lot of numbers on that you could share? Is that
Well-
net of savings on the trash
Yeah,
side?
so because it's so comprehensive, we want to look at that as sort of phase two. I mean, if we could get the organics out of the trash, we could have trash once every 2 weeks and recycling every week. Most people have more recycling now than they do trash, so we could flip it around. But not a lot of people like to compost. It's kind of messy. So we think that this is a better approach, and taking the big picture of organics as a phase two.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But would welcome to work with you on crunching those numbers further.
Other questions from councilors? Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, I have a couple. I have a whole bunch of questions about how you generated the numbers, that 196,000, all of them. But I don't want to do that here. I'll do that in committee.
Okay,
right?
sounds good.
But just that bottom line number, which I think it was savings. I can't remember. It was the sum of your pluses.
Yeah, so the
and
sum,
minuses.
the way that was accounted for, so the sale of the bag, so the city gets some of the income from the bag, then we have disposal savings, so that would be deducted. We have recycling increase costs, and we used a factor of $75 a ton. We don't know what the recycling market's going to do. I mean, it could go down to $20. It could be zeroed out again. We don't know, but we were using a factor of $75 a ton. So subtracting those things is how we got those numbers. So we estimated.
So for the most part, that comes up with a surplus.
Yes, and we also were estimating, a general number of about 40% reduction in trash, and we know our tonnage per year has been going up every year, and our tonnage is about 5,400. So we, figure that in as well.
So I know there are other equity problems with making it neutral in terms of the total burden on taxpayers.
Right.
But if you took that figure, which is the savings, if you want to call it that, by doing this, and we reduced the total taxation, then we could potentially make it revenue neutral.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we also could look at having a citywide organics program that was either subsidized or paid for, depending on what the savings are for the city.
Right, so I don't need an answer to this question right now.
Okay.
But that figure of 8, any building with more than 8, at some point did you run models
Yes.
for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12?
3, 7, 10. We did a lot of different models on that.
So in committee.
And the reason we did that as well, so the state says that apartments 3 and under have to be covered by the city with which you're in. Anything over 3 is the responsibility of the landlord. And then the assessor's office views things in tranches, and the way they look at it is housing 4 through 8. So we've decided that the best way to be able to continue to monitor how we're doing and what we're doing and the number of households, because we have to report to DEP on an annual basis that way, and also to check our work every year, was to use that assessor's way, and the state uses that as well. So that's why we chose up to 8, and then so it's 9 and over that was sort of the benchmark. But we have found a way, and I have the exact locations where this would be an impact, and it's not that many. We have found a way that I think is really fair that would allow large condo complexes to continue to have city services, and it would be easy for us to manage. So we can talk about that more as well. But and the way, I'll just tell you, is if you're a condo complex like Clipper Way and you have entrances going out onto a sidewalk, and we can know who's putting their trash out, then those should be included. Not just because they're over nine and over units should they be disqualified. We feel like if they have a way that we can check them and they can put their trash in front of their units, then they should be included. And there's many units that are like that. There are some that aren't, but it really impacts very few by doing that.
Thank you.
And so we know who they are, and we can share which wards they're in. Because we know how difficult this is. We know this is a really difficult potential program, and we know that there's a lot of questions and answers that we'll have to provide, and we know that it's not easy, and it's politically not easy, and it's been hard for many towns to do this, but we've really worked hard to try and cover all of our bases and ask questions and get as much research and input as we can.
Other questions from councilors? Councilor Genta.
Just one more quick. I see Housing Authority on there. Can you speak to what we currently do with the housing authorities?
We pay for all the housing authorities' trash, and a lot of communities do not. But again, with the program that we came up with, we think that we can continue to pay. The one problem might be the Sullivan Building. We might have to work out something there, but whatever we do, we will. I feel strongly that there should be a program for low income and disabilities, but in addition, the Housing Authority, we've come up with a method that definitely the Horton Terrace and Kelleher Park would be covered, and we would have to figure something out with the Sullivan Building.
Okay, yeah.
And if you want to continue that, we know what the cost is to run, I think it's $48,000 off the top of my head, to run the Housing Authority's trash per year. So if you want to continue that program, we can, and we can, make it work. If you don't, if you decide that that's something that should be on the Housing Authority or HUD, then we can look at that as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Horton and Kelleher are mine, so that would be an impact to those communities.
Yes, but again, we've come up with a way that I think that they could continue to be served.
Okay, thank you.
Again, Councilor Zede, if you can't wait to committee.
I'm just thinking ahead to exactly where I wanted to go, is what are you going to do in committee? So if I may, so looking at the numbers, basically if you do anything more than one free bag, you swing to a negative, is how I read it. So basically this only works if you do this, at least from a financial perspective, only to be positive, net positive only works if you do. So I don't know, maybe I'll hold my comments for the consent agenda, but I'm trying to figure out, basically how do we look, what are we supposed to do exactly? Yeah. And so I'll hold those for the consent, but I just wanted to get your agreement on that, because that's how I read this.
That's true.
When you do 2 30-gallon bags, which is effectively 2 bags, it already swings to a negative, right? So that doesn't seem sensible or logical.
Correct.
At least from
That's
where I'm
correct.
sitting, but, okay, thank you.
Thank you, councilors. Thank you,
You're very welcome.
Molly, for your presentation. We have the report, and we have some more detail, obviously, to back up the presentation she made tonight. What is the will of the council with respect to this report and further consideration?
You want to talk about that?
Can't do anything right now.
I mean, we have...
It's in the consent agenda.
The consent agenda.
It is in the consent
Unless
agenda,
you want to
right?
pull it out.
And where do we go with it in consent? Did we...
Well, we haven't got to it yet, but...
So the mayor's update in the consent agenda, as usual.
Yeah.
All right. I'll hold then. Thanks for the correction, Tom. Molly, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can just leave it there if you want.
I promise I'll get it back.
Okay.
I think we're ready for the mayor's update then. Mayor Holliday?
Thank you, Council President O'Brien, members of the City Council, member of the public that are here. Again, Molly and her team have been working on trash for well over a year. I thank the 16 members who participated in numerous long meetings to come up with this analysis and options. I think what's really important is to recognize that there are no decisions that are made here. This is not being introduced as a revenue stream for the city. This is being introduced as a way to reduce our trash. The more awareness, the more programs or options I think that we can put together to unite the community, we can help to get to that reduction in waste, which is really, really important. I know that as a homeowner and paying the $1 a week for composting and pickup, it's been wonderful. It's worth the dollar in terms of the really reduction in trash. I skip weeks sometimes in terms of trash. So I would encourage people to sort of explore that. It's not that difficult to compost. And the fact that you just bring this little bucket out to the street and it gets picked up once a week, it's great. In terms of 41C.5, at our finance team meeting, we had a presentation from a real in-depth look at our analysis of 41C.5. As you know, this was something that we needed a home rule petition from the legislature that did come through. We have a comprehensive packet that will be presented to the City Council at your next meeting as we begin to move forward on finding ways to give additional relief to seniors and their property tax, and this is something that will have to be voted on in the municipal election in November, which is why we'd like to start getting moving on this. So there'll be more information coming on at your next meeting. The Clipper City Rail Trail, I know you had a subcommittee meeting on this too, but it's really important that the redesign of the rail trail as well as the cleanup, design, licensing, and permit happen and lateral paths at the same. It's really important because we've got to be shovel ready. We've been able to reach out to Energy and Environmental Affairs and have made contacts with them and have sent them a really comprehensive package, even more detailed than you have, about the $750,000 in the environmental bond bill, and they anticipate that being complete around May. So I think the timing is good for us in terms of the Mass Coalition Rail Trail Grant plus the bond bill in terms of moving forward. So I encourage and ask for your support on the 40,000 gap transfer so we can move those processes forward. The Brown School, I just wanted to give you an update on where we are. We are still waiting for our project manager from Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance. They're the state organization that has ownership of the National Guard building on Low Street, which we infrequently use for emergency operations. And once we have the property manager assigned, then we can begin to go forward on division of the land. Because obviously we will remove the area by the powder house and the large armory. Then we would determine whether or not the building can be saved or if it's a tear down, and the cost for purchase and development. DCAM has indicated to us that this would be 25 cents on the dollar at a municipal rate in terms of moving forward, and I would respectfully ask of the council that if you could please wait on the ordinance in committee until we have a few more of these details before you move forward and create things in the ordinance that will be difficult for this process. I'd like to remind you that when we met as a committee, which involved 2 city councilors, youth services, 2 people from the planning office, and myself, and we reviewed the proposals that came in on the Brown School as we were trying to do too much with that site, trying to keep the gym, youth services, housing, and parking, and the park or playground. And we all agreed once we met that we rejected all proposals and said that we needed to find a new home for youth services, a permanent home. That was the consensus that we made, and I ask that you give us time to finish the process with DCAM, or at least get to the point where we know the details in terms of the price and whether or not the building can be salvaged there before decisions are made. And just finally wanted to let you know that the committee is meeting on Thursday to review the firehouse. We got 6 proposals for the feasibility study for the firehouse, and we will make the, hopefully, the decision Thursday or shortly thereafter. And Wednesday night at 7 p.m. upstairs is the mayor's state of the city, and would encourage all of you to be there, and the public is invited also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Zede.
Mr. President, I don't know if this is an okay time, but I just want to state for the record that I was on the selection committee. I thought when you said review committee, you meant something else, perhaps your review team, but I did not come to that consensus. I've been pushing for the youth services to stay in the Brown School publicly and privately since that time, up to and including last week. So I just want to stay on record that I won't speak for anybody else on the committee, but that is not the consensus I came to. So thank you.
Other councilors?
Thank you.
Hearing none. Thank you, Mayor. Let's move through the consent agenda. Would the clerk walk us through it, please?
The consent agenda this evening consists of the approval of the minutes for the February 11th meeting. There are no transfers. There are 3 communications. First communication is communication 116, which is towards Zero Waste Newburyport Initiative. Full text available in the clerk's office. That is to be referred to Neighborhood and City Services.
Could we pull that, Mr. President?
Yeah.
Certainly can.
Yep.
Next communication is 117, Flag Day 5K race to be held on June 15th. That's to go to Public Safety. Communication 118 is the Chocolate Tour promoted by Central Congregational. That's to go to Public Safety also. That's to be held May 18th, 2019. The following appointments are first reading appointments. Appointment 82, Chris Keeley, 8 Payson Street, Assistant Harbor Master, Special Police Officer until 12/31/2022. Appointment 83, Adam Armstrong, 5 Buck Street, Harbor Commission as an alternate, 4/1/2021. Appointment 84, Walter Lazinski, 364 Merrimack Street, Harbor Commission, alternate, 4/1/2021. Appointment 85, Charles Griffin, 3 Vernon Street, Parks Commission, the Bartlett Mall representative until 5/1/2022. Appointment 87, Kevin Hunt, 14 10th Street, Veterans Agent until 4/1/2020. The next 2 are appointments to be referred to the Committee on Planning and Development. Appointment 86, Ann Gardner, 239 Water Street, to the Planning Board until 5/31/2024. Appointment 88, Wilbur Schenk, 1 Beck Street, to the Waterfront Trust until 12/1/2024. And that, with the one change of Communication 116 coming out, is the consent agenda this evening.
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're done with the consent agenda. What would we like to do with the mayor's?
Motion to receive and file.
Second. Moved and seconded by Councilor Tontar. Is the second. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is received and filed. Communications. We'll start with 119.
119 is communication on City Council Rules 2019.
Motion to refer to Rules Committee.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's done. Communication 116.
Communication 116, as previously mentioned, is the Toward Zero Waste Newburyport Initiative, which was scheduled to go to Neighborhood and City Services, now on the floor for discussion.
What is the will of the council? Is there a motion? Councilor Agaman?
Point of information. So,
Go ahead.
in the consent agenda, it was going to go to Neighborhood and City Services, but
Yes.
I thought that Molly Edinburgh's group was under the Health Department, which means it would go to Public Safety. Now, again, it's not important to me. It's just that what the law says. We can waive that, I guess. Also, you might want to think about if you have a 2/3 supermajority to
meet jointly or something. That's all. I just wanted to get that out there. I don't have an answer.
Well, I think we need a motion to decide.
Second.
Moved and seconded to move to public safety. Councillor Zede moved, Councillor Devlin, excuse me, sir.
Whatever his name is.
Seconded. Discussion of that motion. Councillor Vogel.
Thank you. I would just like to see that go to committee of the whole. I think this is going to be a pretty open discussion.
It's friendly.
Yeah, friendly amendment to committee of the whole as well.
Yeah. Second.
Thank you.
So the motion would be committee of the whole and
Public safety and committee of the whole.
Councillor Zede.
Thank you. It is a friendly amendment. I don't have any problems. But what I'm not clear on is I'm not sure what we're trying to do here with this. I mean, to me, part of me feels that we should just receive and file this. And if a councilor wants to submit it as an actual proposal, then that would be the forum. We've had a number of things now where we've done it in different ways. And I find that, you know, that was the reason for my final question to Molly. I don't know where she went, but this only works perhaps in one configuration, depending on how you look at it. So if somebody wants to put it in and make it an actual proposal, then that would be up to them. If not, then it would actually lend itself better towards, you know, forming another ad hoc of the city council. If you're just going to basically just be running around sort of in any direction, observing or studying or whatever, I just don't get what is it we're going to expect out of public safety to deliver us or any committee on something like this. We receive some information, we have an endorsement from the administration, we don't have a proposal. Who wants to put their name on it and do it? Because I could just be blunt. I mean, the Waterfront West experience has been a little bit of a learning curve of what makes sense to just have us spend time on sort of openly and what makes sense to come in as at least one councilor thinks is a good idea. We should pursue this, and then we have a debate about what the parameters are around that. So, for your consideration.
Other comments? Questions? Councillor Khan.
Okay. Thank you, Council President. I think one of the things I would like to see by it going into a committee is that it would allow us to have the public discussion as well as amongst ourselves. So I do think that in the presentation there's a proposal of the scenario, and I think it's worth vetting that and having that go through the due diligence and process. So even if it's at the end of the day we take the document and we bring it back and we receive and file, we could still do that after we discuss it in committee. So that's still something, but at least we give an opportunity for it to go into a committee and be discussed and have the public weigh in as well. So I guess this is what I'm trying to do is we do want the public involved and engaged, and I think this is the way to do it. I don't want to receive and file it now. I think there's a lot of good questions and information here that would be great to vet in a committee. Thank you.
Further discussion. Councillor Vogel.
Thank you. Well, I rise in support of both. I hear your concerns and I hear your understanding as well. I think that out of committee, I think that we do then let's come up with an order or whatever it might be in order to present and put this into effect. So I agree, but I do think that we need to hash it out, and I thank you.
Going around the table, I don't see anyone else. Councillor Zede, did you have something else?
Comment. I mean, no, even if it goes to committee, it'll have to come in new as an order. We've had this discussion before. You can't convert the communication into an order, so it's going to start anew and afresh with that. I'm not opposed strongly to send it to committee. I'm just saying that, you know, as far as how we work as a body, we still need to be clear about what is the expectation, to be fair to those committee members and to be reasonable to the public as far as, do I need to be involved in this? It's not really a proposal. Should I be involved now or should I wait? I mean, those questions still exist, but I'm not going to oppose sending it to committee. I never have a problem with more conversation.
And I assume that's because it's primarily an administrative function that's going to be dealt with by the Board of Health. But
I don't know.
any other discussion?
We'll find out.
Can't answer that question.
Maybe not. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the referral to Public Safety and Committee of the Whole say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
1 no. That's the last of communications. Appointments.
Appointment, we have one appointment. It's Christian Hansen, 29 Hill Street, to the Library Board of Directors.
Motion to approve on second reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? So,
Roll call.
I'm sorry. Second reading. It's roll
Second
call.
reading. For the appointment number 81, Councilor Tantar,
Yes.
Councilor Vogel,
He said yes.
Said yes.
Yes.
Sorry. Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Agaman.
Yes.
Councilor Genta.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan. Councilor Connell.
Yes. Orders.
We have one order. It is tabled. It is Order 82, as amended in committee. It is the order with respect to fees in the fire department.
Will the council? Councilor
Motion
Tantar?
to remove from the table.
Second.
Moved and seconded to remove from the table. Discussion? Councilor Tantar?
Motion to approve.
But no, let's get it off the table first. Discussion on the movement to get it off the table. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. Councilor Tantar moved, Councilor Khan seconded. Discussion, Councilor Tantar.
So just to bring you where we were, we did discuss this 2 weeks ago at the council meeting. The committee recommended 2-1 that we approve these fees. Subsequent discussion raised a number of questions. We asked the chief and the deputy from the fire department to come to be available to answer questions. So one question, what we did, we had an amendment in committee that stated that the permit fee for tents only applied for tents of 400 square feet or more. Secondly, there were a set of questions in opposition to a fee for outside burning. And thirdly, there was sort of a question on unvented gas appliances. But I imagine the chief and the deputy would entertain other questions as well.
Are there questions you'd like to pose to our expert witnesses? Councilor Genta?
These were all my questions. So here we are. And I apologize. I thought we were going to do it in subcommittee. I didn't realize it was tabled, if you will, get you out earlier. But so let's start with the unvented appliances. So I used to sell these back in the day. And the one thing that I looked at here is you have a gas appliance that would be inspected by the plumbing inspector, but then I see a fee for the fire department. So I dug up 248 CMR, and it does say on here that the inspection would be done by the head of the fire department or by the local estate gas inspector having jurisdiction. And I understand what these products are, and I understand the danger of these products. I just don't want a resident to have to pay twice for the same thing. So I just want to make sure that we're picking one person to do the inspection with one fee. And in my eyes, and again, you guys do a great job, in my eyes, I know the plumbing inspector has to come out to test the gas line. So it would make sense to me that he does the inspection.
No. Is that the gas code referring to?
Microphone.
Excuse me. Could you approach Steve? Yeah, on mic, please.
Is that the gas code you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. By Mass General Law, you need a fire permit and a gas permit. The gas inspector is not going to check for compliance of your smoke detectors and your carbon monoxide detectors. So it is a requirement. I have it's right here. If you want. It is a permit.
Right.
That is not the only permit that operates like that. It's the same thing as propane. So if you're going to, especially after what happened in Lawrence, a lot of people have been hooking up with propane. We need a fire permit to hook up to store propane in your property, along with a gas permit. So that's not unusual.
But in
But it is.
that particular state law, it says one or the other.
No.
And I'm just trying to protect the residents and the fact that I want them to have a good inspection and be safe.
I'll just read you Mass General Law, Chapter 148, which is a general law. You're referring to a CMR, which is a regulation, I believe. A permit required from the head of the fire department, and a permit required from the local or state gas inspector. So you need both.
Okay. All right. I take your word on that.
Thank you for the clarification. Councilor Earls.
But there already is a fee when you come out
to do, we already have the fee, the first fee there.
Yeah,
for the inspection.
we've been doing unvented gas since the day, at least 12 years. We do it under miscellaneous.
So you do both.
The unvented gas that you see is not a new permit charge for us. We've been doing that for at least 12 years.
When you come out to do, what work do you actually do when you do the unvented?
Yeah,
gas appliance? What, are you looking for carbon monoxide detectors?
Yeah, first of all, the resident, not the resident, the plumber, the licensed plumber is going to see me in my office, and he's going to apply for a permit, and we're going to check to make sure that it is an approved appliance. It has to be an approved appliance. So we're going to check for that, that it has the right amount of BTU ratings, that you're not putting in a kitchen, a bathroom or a bedroom. So, I mean, there's a whole list of things that we check for. And then we're going to come out and do the carbon monoxide inspection.
Which there is a fee for.
Which there is.
So what would be the unvented, why would you be charging twice?
We're not charging twice.
There's two separate fees.
No, the carbon monoxide is a residential when you're selling your house.
So this unvented includes the carbon monoxide, but this is a different type of, this is a different service.
Fee. It's a different service.
Okay.
What you're referring to is the smoke detector when you're selling your house at 26 F&a-half.
Yep.
If you install an unvented gas appliance today, you need to come see me and get a permit.
I see the difference. Thank you.
Why don't you stay right there, please, Deputy?
Okay.
Sorry, I'm not as well versed as the Ward 5 councilor. What is an unvented gas?
It's
appliance?
not-
Is a gas dryer unvented?
No, gas fireplace.
Is a gas fireplace pretty much the only one you can? It's the most common one, maybe.
The wood stove looking thing, you know. It could be a fireplace insert where instead of you don't want to burn wood anymore, so you're going to block it off. You can have unvented gas appliances as long as it's not in your bedroom or in your bathroom. And it can't be a primary source of heat. So that's what else we check for.
Yep.
You can't put it on your porch unless you put heat out there, then you can put it on your porch. So we work along with the gas inspector on it. Along with propane, too.
Councilor Junta.
We'll keep on rolling. So the next one that I had questions about was the commercial tent. And we did make an amendment on that, but one of the things that came to us, and we don't have it today, but it showed a spreadsheet of 11 towns and the fees that they charge. And some of these fees, like the commercial tent, like almost nobody charged the fee. When I tried to do some research, I found a lot of writing in regards to people cooking under a commercial tent. I can certainly see the problem. But in this case here, it just appears to me that if I'm having a graduation and I call Taylor Rental to bring out a commercial tent, am I paying a permit? I'm just looking for clarification of where it starts and ends, if you will.
Yeah, no, I've talked to the chief about this. We don't want to charge for those. We're talking about tents that I have to go out and inspect, very large tents. So that tent you're talking about, you need a building permit for that. So somebody has to come meet with me and show me the flammability rating. I'll sign off on it. But we don't go out and inspect those backyard tents. I'm talking about the tents like they have when Oldies Marketplace had their auction where, you know, for the weekend they would put all the furniture in there, and that's what I'm talking about, that type of tent. Well, I have to go down there and physically inspect it to make sure it's not going to blow over in a storm. So I think we probably should raise the square footage up, because that is going to hit backyard wedding tents.
Yeah.
So I don't think we would have any problem raising that up, because the intent is not for the homeowners to pay us a fee to have.
Okay. Would you give?
I would have had to pay for 3 of them.
Would you give us a recommendation on what the appropriate size would be?
I would say 2,000 is a big tent. So that would, I mean, that is, you have a 2,000 square foot tent. I should be there looking at it. If that's only going to happen.
Yeah.
Are you recommending?
Big event.
Excuse me, through the chair.
As a threshold?
Excuse me, through the chair.
I was just trying to hear what he said.
But I didn't
Our
see it.
recommendation would be over 2,000 square feet. 2,000 square, and change it from, was it 400 to 2,000?
For the sake of
that's a large
clarity,
tent.
I'm going to ask the councilors to raise their hand and be recognized first. That also makes it more clear for the residents who are watching at home. I didn't hear your last response. I'm sorry, Deputy.
Yeah, that would be our intent. Our intent is not for somebody, small events, let's say down at the tannery, a small event down there. But it is for the larger tent. I would say 2,000 would be, that's something that we would be comfortable with, and we should go out and inspect that, probably more than once.
Thank you. Further questions from the members? Councillor Genta, Councillor Tantar, did you want to jump in? Councillor Genta.
I'm going to second it.
Yeah, I was going to make an amendment that we change the commercial tent to 2,000 square feet and above.
Second.
Discussion of that change. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Is there another item? I think there is.
Thank you, sir. So my last one is the commercial burning for $10, which very few communities from, outside burning. I'm sorry, I'm reading like two different lines. The commercial cooking was above it. Apologize. The outside burning, which almost no towns except for a couple surrounding us had in the grid that we gave. Now, you know, I live in the West End, so represent with Councilor O'Brien, the West End, and we do a lot of burning on our side of town. I think it goes pretty well.
Yeah.
You may feel different about that.
What are you referring to?
Just
What type of burning?
brush.
Okay, so we're on the same page with that, okay.
Right, but I did again do some reading, and when I was reading through the state law about outside burning, they were mentioning that fire pits should be included in that. And so then that brings me to another troubling thing, because we have a lot of fire pits in my side of town and that are used all summer, and I would hate to think that we have to pay $10 every time we put the fire pit on.
No, it's totally two separate issues. The open burning charge for $10 is, burning season is from January 15th through May 1st. We want people to come in, and right now we presently do over the phone. You want to burn, you call up, the dispatcher gives you the information, what you can do. We want to physically bring people in so we can give them a permit number for the season, not just for the particular day, but for the season, and give them a handout how far away you have to be from your house. Make sure you got a fire extinguisher. Somebody's going to be there to watch it, the hours, so we can teach them safety. We felt $10 was really reasonable. That's what Salisbury's been doing that for years. And so if you could burn, that you get a permit number for the year, the particular date you wanted to burn, you would still have to call in with your permit number, so we would let you know whether or not you can burn today.
Okay.
The other issue is a total separate issue that I'm not sure that if you read the fire code on it, it's very complicated, and I'm not going to say you can't do it, but we don't want people having fire pits down on Federal Street, down on Lime Street. What you can do up on Turkey Hill Road is a lot more reasonable what you can do on Lime Street. So if you call the fire department to ask us if you can have a fire pit, we're going to say no, you can't, unless you're 18 years old and you are cooking, and you are 75 feet away from your house, and you're on a non-combustible surface. That's what we're going to tell you. We get a lot of phone calls from people during the summer, Plum Island, every weekend, 2, 3, 4 times a night. So that's a total different subject, and depending, if you read the fire code, it kind of says you can do it, maybe. If you look on Haverhill Fire's website, it says you can do it, but if you call the fire marshal's office, they say, no, you can't do it unless you're cooking. Always have to be cooking.
Marshmallows.
But that's a total different issue, because we live in an old town. And we don't want people with backyard fires in most of our town.
Understood.
Other questions from the councilors?
Could I make an amendment that outside burning is would be for a yearly permit?
Yeah, that's what it is now, yeah.
Seasonal permit.
That's what it would be.
I'd just like to have it in writing, so when it's in the books, that people understand it's not $10 an event, it's $10 for the season.
So is that, you're moving to amend?
Yeah, amend, please.
Is there a second to that amendment? Did I hear a second?
Yes.
It was Charlie.
Councilor Earls it was?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar, I'm sorry.
Councilor Earls, but I'll do it.
Any discussion on that amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. It is amended. Thank you, Deputy. Thank you, Chief. We have a motion on the floor to adopt this packet, correct?
Yes.
Do we?
As amended.
As amended.
Could the clerk clarify where we are, please?
Well, we have two amendments. We have an amendment to increase the size, square footage size of the commercial tent. That was a motion to amend. It passed. And we have a motion to amend the outside burning such that it be a yearly permit. That was also a motion to amend that passed. So now we have a motion to approve as amended.
Point of order. Seasonal permit.
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry,
Councilor Vogel?
you want seasonal, not yearly?
I
I thought you said yearly.
No.
There's only one time of the year you can burn. That would,
January-
that would take place.
January to May.
Because it's too late.
It's too late now.
People have already started.
Do you like the verbiage seasonal or yearly?
Seasonal would be better.
Seasonal.
Seasonal.
Seasonal it is.
Sold.
Just so we all know what it is.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Further discussion on this matter? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no ordinances. We're going to move to committee items. Budget and Finance, you're up.
Motion to remove order number 71, CPC fiscal year 19, custom house slate roof.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of removing 71 from committee, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No, it's out. Is there a motion?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Second.
And seconded. Discussion, Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, committee recommends 2-1 that we approve of this transfer. We have been holding in committee for some time because we wanted to finish the process of the deed and being accepted, which we did in the last meeting. In essence, the argument for approving the transfer is that the custom house is an important structure, extremely important structure in the community. I would say it's one of two principal landmarks in the city, and that there is a overarching public interest in assuring that that building is preserved. And obviously replacing the slate roof would help to accomplish that. So 2 of us voted yes. I do understand that there is, some, we discussed in committee the anti-aid amendment, which has an extremely interesting history. I would also note that in Helms versus Commonwealth, there was a 3-part test and when it was not a religious institution, in this case, it is not, the court basically focused on the issue as to whether or not it served a public interest for the expenditure of the money. In that case, it was Battleship Cove in Fall River, and it was state expenditures on refurbishing the USS Massachusetts, which is managed by a not-for-profit, very similar to the Maritime Society. So I would strongly urge that you vote in the affirmative on this.
Further discussion. Councilor Eigenman.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank the committee for holding us until we got the deed restriction done. So I'm going to vote in favor of this. I do agree that there's an adequate public interest that's protected now. It wasn't before. So it's legitimate, I believe, to give them the $110,000 to protect an asset that we've invested in as a city as well, and we hold a residual interest in. I don't want to debate the case law, but just for future reference, that case is known as the loophole so big that you can drive a battleship through it. So I wouldn't look to the case law is really not very helpful. We have to look to ourselves, and I think this one it fits the bill. We're protected. It is an important asset, and that's what I'll be looking for future CPA grants too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Zede.
Well, I do have to stand up and speak since I was the lone vote against. I will be voting against this tonight, and I'm going to keep my comments narrow just to this request. We don't need to rehash the past. So But there's a couple things. One is I do find the anti-aid amendment to be very interesting, and if you haven't read it for yourself, you should, because it essentially says you can't make a donation to a charity. And the interesting thing is charities are granted charity status because by definition they serve a public interest. So by that same measure, you could just donate to anything. I mean, I have a lot of charities I like too, including the Custom House Maritime Society, although they may not believe me. So it's just one of those things that, to me, we had this discussion in committee a little bit about how transactional in nature should CPA grants be? In other words, do you give something in exchange for something, and that something you receive often would be a preservation restriction? In this case, we're not receiving anything in this case. There is already a preservation restriction on file from 2003, which was carried forward in the deed that carried the transfer of the property to the Maritime Society. And so today, what do you hold in your hands to say this is the public interest here? It's just that we like the building, we know it's important for Newburyport's history, but I could stand up and make that argument for almost any charity because they almost all universally do good work. So I find that to be deeply troubling. Of course, I've read the same court case. I find it to be equally murky. The three-part test, which is mostly for religious institutions or is odd. So that's one context. Second is, every party has their fiduciary responsibility, and if I sat on the Custom House board, I think it's entirely sensible to apply for these grants. In fact, it's the right thing, smart thing to do. But where I sit here, I'm not on that board. I'm on this board, and my fiduciary responsibility belongs to the people in my ward. And I find it's an interesting dichotomy tonight that we're talking about fees on just about everything, struggling with certain things, but yet we have enough to make a donation essentially to a charity. So that's troubling to me. And last but not least is contextually, you know well that the building was just transferred, and that's a bit of a difficult timing pill to swallow to both transfer the property in its entirety as well as to now also fund repairs. So those are my comments, and I'll be voting no tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Devlin.
Yes, I'm going to be voting no against this as well. It's sort of a matter of, we're giving their cake and letting them eat it as well. We've given CPC money to publicly owned buildings and parks, and we've given money to privately owned buildings of historic significance. And some councilors have voted no, when it was a church with the steeple line and the historic significance of that. But this would be the first time that we've giving funds to a privately held building where we just gave them the building. Prior to giving them the building, I had told it up. We had given them about $1.2 million over 10 years towards the Custom House, which is a significant investment. And I was debating whether that was enough. But we also just gave them somewhere between a $1 and $2 million piece of property. If you couple that with the money that we've given in the past that the ward councilor from Ward 2 alluded to, we've given them a significant amount of money. And we have invested a lot in that, and now it's somebody else's turn for that money. So there's only a finite amount of funds in the CPA. So I think it's better spent someplace else. It's somebody else's turn. We heard a couple of months ago when the NRA was thinking about transferring these funds, and we heard from Bob Eulig that we were transferring it to a very responsible board and group. And the councilor from Ward 1 had said at one point, yeah, they're very responsible now, but we don't know what they're going to be like in 10 years. But my feeling is if they're so responsible that we're going to give them the care of this property, it's time for them to take care of the property as well. So I think these funds could be used in 30 different other places, and so I'm going to vote no.
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Council President. I am going to talk a little bit about the Conservation Preservation Committee and their process. And one of the things I just want to make sure we all are aware of or recognize, and the reason I want to share this is that I hope that whatever we're thinking right now that's kind of preventing us from approving this, which is a project that they recommended based on the proposals that they got, that it's important for whatever we do that we convey that and that it just follows the due process. So if we do have some reservations about the type of projects that CPC funds are going to be used for, let's communicate that, and I hope they're all watching that, because I do think they do their due diligence as they go through their checklists and they do their process of vetting all the projects and the binders that come before them. It is great. You could go on the website for the Conservation Preservation for the state and find all the projects that Newburyport did fund in the last few years. And in looking at that, there were a few projects for HVAC systems for the Museum of Old Newbury, which had two buildings. So I don't know who owns those buildings or if they're publicly held or privately. I don't know, but in my just kind of reviewing what is considered historic preservation or open space or what's being used for these funds, I do think that it's important for us to look at them based on not only based on the recommendation of the committee, who we appoint, but to also understand, what is the significance of these funds being used for something that is a benefit for our city. So I am going to be voting in favor of this, and again, whatever we do, I do hope we could give that feedback to the committee, so that if there are reservations future, we're consistent in how we do and approve things. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Genta.
I just want to talk about the process a little bit. This originally came to the council and it lost 5-5. And for folks who don't follow the city council, a tie is a loss. That's the way it works. And I happened to be on a cruise ship in the Gulf of Mexico on this, and it's just the process. I'm one of those guys who likes to sort of follow the letter of the law, if you will. And this was in a package of items, and it didn't pass. And that package of items was held up just to hold on to this. And then this was repackaged alone and then sent back through the system again to get back to us again. And before I was a city councilor, I used to come to city council meetings, shocking, and I watched the city council vote against 2 different items. And well, of course you were there, Council President. You remember Tom Jones and Senator Ives, right? There were 2 things they didn't like, and it went back and forth and back and forth. I was sitting right over here. And there were 2 items that lost. And the mayor at that time signed the bundle, and life went on. Because some things passed and some things didn't. Now, I always thought that the 2 things that didn't pass would just come back the next year, right? Why not? You can reapply every year. But this one kind of got held up, repurposed, sent back in, come back around again. And the reality of is if it went through the normal process, we would have got this in the next CBC group, not individually. And for folks that have been on the council for a while, you guys know what I'm talking about. So this one here is kind of getting some special treatment, I guess is what I'm saying without saying it. And I don't really have any objections about their roof, but I just don't like this process, because it just makes the next guy who doesn't win have hopes that maybe they could do this. That's my only issue with it, but I get the slate roof. I love the custom house. I'm just wondering, as a council, what process we're using here. That's all. That's just my only reservation on this. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to chime in at some point, but I'll let Councilor Tantar speak first.
So I just have to add a little to that. I did come in the next meeting and propose that this be reconsidered, and that was withdrawn. All right, and then as in other cases, the Community Preservation Committee met. So if you see the date on this, it's October 29th, 2018. So the CPC met. They reconsidered it, and they did a supplemental proposal, which they have done in other cases. So I think this actually is procedurally on the up and up.
I'm going to call upon myself for a moment. If Councilor Earls would take the chair. Well, actually, I'm just going to ask you to take the chair and recognize me.
Gavel him down, Greg.
Don't recognize who that is.
That'd be awesome. Silence.
If I go past 2 minutes, he's got that gavel. He's gonna...
Would anyone else like to speak? Councilor Connell.
Thank you to all the councilors for indulging me. First to Councilor Genta, welcome to the sausage factory. Yes, occasionally it looks complicated, sometimes contradictory based on previous activities, but usually I'm trying to think of some time when we've completely ignored the rules. I think we adhere to the rules. Unless and until the rules don't meet the requirements of the moment. I was one of the 3 councilors who petitioned the NRA to hold up the conveyance of this property. I don't think their action at the time was the best outcome for the Custom House Museum. I came to that conclusion having been on the Maritime Society's board in previous years when things were not quite so rosy. And I could have imagined, and I do imagine, the possibility at some point in the future, and it's not right now because it's a terrific organization, it is well supported and well organized and meeting its mission. For that organization, like some communities' organizations, to fade a little bit and perhaps not meet its obligations. And I thought the best circumstances under those conditions would be for the city to be the owner and to take control. I think the outcome that we got, not being ideal, was adequate. Not ideal, but adequate. And we come back to this idea of fixing the roof. Why do we jump through some hoops to fix this roof now? Because as anybody who has ever owned or maintained a structure, a building, if the roof leaks, everything else goes to pieces. The plaster in the walls gets muddy. Mold develops. This not only is this a building of architectural and historic significance, but the collections deteriorate. So the assets of the society that are held with a public interest in mind could deteriorate. I think this is a great appropriation. I voted for it the first time. I'm going to vote for it enthusiastically again tonight. And I urge you to look at this in that light, that this has been a public asset that we're proud of, that has historic significance not just to Newburyport, but to the region and to the nation. Look at some of the history. Look at what it was originally built to do. And I think we as a community, no longer the caretaker, have an opportunity to give this building a good send-off in the hands of its new owners. I guess a dowry comes to mind, but that kind of trivializes what this means to me. I think it's an important structure. It's a structure that we have had a responsibility to maintain for years, and sometimes have done it better than at other times as a community. And I think the prospects for this structure in the hands of the Maritime Society look pretty darn good. And if we can help them move in the future now in a direction toward further maintaining and improving, there are lots of things that have to be done on that building, then we should do so. I urge you to vote in favor of this appropriation tonight. Thank you.
I'll cede the chair.
No, point of order. Point of order.
President has to stay down, watch him speak until it is decided according to, I think, Rule 6, our rules, and also Robert's Rules of Order. You have to stay down until we have a vote on it, then you can return to the chair.
Fair enough.
Councilor Devlin, I believe, is first.
I am going to praise the council president's eloquence, and also that was political speak at its highest order. It really was fantastic. But the council president doth speak out of both sides of his mouth on that one. If it is such an important public building, why did the NRA give it away?
Point of order.
This is Listen, don't interrupt me. Look, this is a structure that is so important. We will all agree on the importance of the structure, yet we just let it be given away for almost nothing, some deed restrictions, which I don't want to revisit that argument again. But this is going to create, it's creating a situation a lot like the NRA and the waterfront trusts lots, where we maintain the parking lots, but we don't take all the revenue. It is a very confused situation. I'm sorry, cut the umbilical cord. We're not talking about a lot of money. This is not what, I'll be very clear of what I'm saying. We've given money away from the CPA to publicly owned buildings. We've given it away to privately owned buildings. We've never given it away to a privately owned building that we just gave to the private owner. So that's the difference here, and that's the criteria. If the CPC wants the criteria from me, this was proposed before the property was given away, but don't agree to give money to something that's not going to be ours a couple of months later. So that's my clear instruction. And I think most of the public would agree with me. This is a misuse of these funds.
Councilor Agaman.
I just wanted to address the issue of the the CPC's, the Community Preservation Commission's procedures, because the councilor at large had spoken some minutes ago about being clear what we expect. I think I have been clear and I've been consistent, and I think Mike Doucette, the chair, can attest to that over the years, that I want to see that there's a durable public interest. So for example, the Museum of Old Newbury, they were the last nonprofit to be furious with me when I said, I need to see that there's a preservation restriction before we give you money to do the mint. And that went over like a lead balloon, but it was the right thing to do. So actually, I think this council has been very clear. But one thing I want to be clear to the public about is the CPC does work as volunteers, and they make their recommendations to us, but they don't call the shots. We call the shots. We're the ones who appropriate money. That's tax money. That is real property tax money that we all pay into. It is not a grab bag of fun money. So that's our decision. That's all I wanted to say.
Councilor Zeeb.
I just feel compelled, after the council president's comments, to remind folks that we have another historical asset that also has a leaking roof, and that's the high school. And I wish we would apply the same standard that we're talking about here to the building that a lot of our kids spend a lot of time in every day. That's all.
Any further comments? I'd entertain a roll vote.
Roll call?
Roll call.
So roll call for approving Order 71. Councilor Tantar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Zeeb?
No.
Councilor Devlin?
No.
Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien?
No.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
Receiving 3 noes, needing 6, measure passes.
I see the chair.
Let's check with the parliamentarian. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, councilors. Anything else on the budget and finance?
Motion to remove transfer 38, transfer of $45,000 free cash to Safe Routes to School project, $45,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded to take out of committee. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? No, it's out.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilor Tantar.
Budget and Finance Committee recommends 3-0. Sorry. made eye contact with another counselor, and I just started laughing. I don't know why.
Very nice.
Sorry, we'll look at the wall. 3-0 to approve this. A couple things about this. The $45,000, first of all, is to be utilized because the city needs to obtain rights of temporary easements so that the work can be done across property. I think at this point we have 11 easements, and we have more. We're up to 18,
Whoa.
so we're getting there. These funds will be used for is to track down the rest of the owners, in some cases perhaps paying for the temporary easement. It's estimated $45,000, should be enough to do it. Other than that, question committee was asked whether or not there were any other city funds that had gone into this, other than staff time, of course. The state, we put in a number of change orders. The state absorbed those costs in this project. The one outstanding potential future cost would be a state estimate of $22,500 to dispose and hold the old bricks. And we don't, that hasn't been done yet, and we don't, that's not on the table at this point. So, that's it. We recommend, again, 3-0 approval.
Further discussion on safe routes? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's done. Anything else?
Yes. Motion to remove transfer 39, transfer of $40,000 of free cash to the rail trails phase 2 project, $40,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of taking this out of committee say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's out.
Motion to approve the committee voted.
Excuse me, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councillor Khan. Oh, Councillor Tantar.
All right, I'm gonna
go ahead.
So yeah, the vote in committee was 2-1 to approve. We received some supplemental and more detailed information on this in committee from Jody Vining, the project manager. There are in committee we had a fairly lengthy discussion on this. I'm going to use round figures, which seems to be what we're doing tonight. Essentially what it came down to is we have $200,000 approximately that we're kind of arguing about, and the discussion committee was whether or not it was better to put that money toward the cleanup this summer, because we know with this transfer we would have the funds to do that, or whether or not we should put that $200,000 toward design work toward the rail trail. So there are two aspects to the project. One aspect is cleaning up the riverside and the PCBs that are located there. The other aspect is finishing the rail trail, right? Again, the question in committee was, should we finish off the cleanup and then look for money to do the design? What was compelling, I think, to the majority of the committee is that the timing is such that the city really needs to get the design documents in place because as many people may know, there's a $750,000 earmark in the state's environmental bond bill. It's earmarked for the city to finish this work. However, we are competing with other communities to get that. The sooner we are shovel ready, the better our probability of getting that. And so I think that was we understand that was the reason that we are going with doing the design on the rail trail. We also have other sources of potential funding. The $750,000 for the, from the environmental bond bill, another $300,000 from Mass Trails. We received a $100,000 grant from Brownfields. There will be is a CPA application for fiscal year 20 funds to fill a gap. And so I think this works, all right, if we can get those grants and they come in. So we recommend 2-to-1 to approve.
Discussion further. Councillor Zede.
As is customary, I'll follow the chair. So I'm really trying to appeal to your sense of prudence on this one to vote against this transfer tonight. This is my ward. I want the rail trail done just like everybody else does, but this is not a prudent transfer. In order for any of the things that happen at the end, which is the trail being complete, the wastewater treatment plant receiving some additional protections from storm surge and so forth, the cleanup has to be done. It has to be done first. And there's a lot of ironies here for me. First of all, I think you all got this one here. You know, you basically have $228,000 of actual money in hand. You have $100,000 brownfields, you have $128 from the CPA, and everything else says requested 211. That's what they're asking for here today. The Mass Trails was requested February 1, awards 5.5. Everything else is requested. Now, you already know that the cleanup, which is shown in the cost below, is a combination of the $200,000 line for the soil contamination plus the $93,800. You have $293,800 that you know you have to spend. And again, you can't pass go. You can't get to the other stuff until you do the cleanup. But you've only even got $228,000 identified. You have to play this one out. This is why I think prudent is the word of the night for me. Play it out. Everything's requested. We don't know what's going to happen with that money. And so if we don't get the money, then what happens? We've spent money on a design that we potentially can't follow through on. But we know we have to clean up the PCBs, and I'm a strong advocate of doing that, not just because it's the right thing to do, but frankly, pragmatically, if we don't clean it up, we have to send the EPA 6,000 reports a day, or whatever it is, at a huge cost. So we are on the hook to clean it up. Once you know about it, you have to clean it up. It seems sensible to me, Mr. President, to go in order and do things in the right order. Second thing is, I understand the timing concerns. I understand shovel readiness. I understand trying to bait the people that make you beg for your tax dollars back from the state, that you're shovel ready, so you should be accepted. There's nothing that says we have to wait another year, but we could at least wait until we get this cleanup done. And one big concern for me is that cleanups can turn out to be a lot more expensive than you thought. So what if the EPA is unhappy with us, as they were on the garage site with what was supposed to be a relatively minor asbestos cleanup that ended up mushrooming a little bit in terms of cost because they want us to take more dirt out or whatever. I'm also the ward councilor for Plum Island, so I know all about working on the water. It's a very difficult thing to do, and oftentimes very costly to do. So I thought this was going to be an easy transfer because I figured we were going to get the cleanup done and we were going to move on. The other ironic thing, which I'm in my ironic night here tonight, is that the bid package here is going to be ready in April, is what it says here, but everything else is after April. So we're in an ironic situation where I guess we're going to go out to bid before we have the money, which has been of off debate here on this floor over the past 3 years. So it's not that I have a problem with the 40 grand. It's not that I have a problem with the project overall. It's just it doesn't seem prudent to go in this order. And I have one final thing I want to say. A new player has entered the game. Player 3 has entered the game, and that's the wastewater treatment plant. And this really wasn't on the radar. Protecting the wastewater treatment plant had not appeared in a capital improvement plan. It's not something we've talked about. I'm the chair of public utilities. I should know. I'm not saying it's not important, but what it hasn't done is it hasn't coalesced yet. The Water Sewer Commission's just meeting for the first time on Wednesday, really, to get the briefing going. There is crossover between these two things. It's not clear to me anyways yet how much how much crossover there is, and the wastewater treatment plant could need substantially more than what the rail trail we're talking about, or it could need substantially less in terms of funding. So I think a stepwise process is logical. Let's fund the cleanup. We know we're on the hook to do that. Once the cleanup's out of the way and we have a good sense that the costs came in the way we anticipated them, because we really have no other source besides free cash until these grants come in, whether they do or they don't, then we can go on to the next step, and that can give the Water Sewer Commission, and frankly myself anyways, for whatever it's worth, an opportunity to interact with them, as I hope to go on Wednesday and learn about what they're talking about and how they're talking about it, and how big of a wall do you need, or berm, or revetment wall, or stones, or whatever the case is going to be. something which ironically can't apparently be done on Plum Island for the residents that want it there. That's a whole other discussion for another day. So I'm asking you to consider that as you vote tonight.
Councilor Agaman.
Yeah, I guess through the chair, I had a question for Jordy on.
Mr. Vining, would you come up?
Yeah, no, I was focused on the last bit of what the Councilor in Ward 1 was talking about, which is trying to get double duty out of this project. So first, we're trying to do a revetment to protect the shoreline, and I know you're, but I would like to design it once and build it once if it's needed for the wastewater treatment plant. So I'm wondering, here's the question, could we hold this for 2 weeks until we can hear from Water and Sewer that this would not be a false start for them?
Well, I'd prefer that it not be held for 2 weeks as the project manager, just trying to move the process forward. I guess what I might start with is the community's been working on this larger project for 2 decades. This has been in our master plans and our open space plans.
Well,
This riverfront section is part, I'm getting there, is part of it. So when the 175,000 CPA portion of funding associated with this project came in front of you all in the fall, these questions were front and center, and we were dealing with them then. So we were talking specifically at the time about whether everything was going to be sequential, whether it was all going to be done at once. So when the funding was approved in the fall, there was a list of steps that we were taking, including contracting with coastal marine engineers to do this design and get these permits amended, and that's what we've been doing. So we have contracted. This isn't a question of can we use the remaining CPA funding and try to combine it with this transfer request and find a little bit more to do the cleanup. We've already contracted with GZA and Stantec to initiate that process. And because we were able to do that, we now have some numbers to work with, which are in our hands now. And we have numbers to start working with and engineers to start working with Water and Sewer. So this is all part of the process of having funding and working with consultants and identifying numbers and identifying approaches, which is part of the process of getting any of this done. So that's my overall answer to why are we doing these things now. We're doing these things now because there's a very long lead time on all of these processes.
Yeah,
But I think Councilor Agaman has asked a question a little more. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the staffer is responding to somebody else. My only question is, I've been alerted to the fact on the floor tonight that maybe the wastewater treatment plant could use some help. And here we are working on something next door. I'm only trying to figure out that this project can get double duty. That's all I'm trying. I didn't say anything about remediation of soil. That's all I'm getting at. Is if we do this revetment, does that help them? Is it a waste of money? Do we have to undo it? That was my question.
Can you respond to that, please?
I'm sorry if I didn't start answering that. I think there's little question that protecting that shoreline through a revetment is going to be important for not only protecting the future rail trail there, but protecting the plant. Dewberry, the coastal engineers hired with the capital improvement funding and the municipal vulnerability preparedness grant, they have noted right up front that as a first step, the community is going to have to stop the erosion of that shoreline. So having a revetment along that shoreline, because right now it's just tumble down stone. Everywhere else to the north and south you have seawalls and revetments, but not along this section. We have to start studying that. We are already coordinating with the DPS, with the city engineer, now with the Water and Sewer Commission to figure out who's doing what and where, given our overlapping objectives, where we can combine forces and where we will be operating on a parallel track. I think if the overall goal is to have a reinforced shoreline and a rail trail in front and some sort of berm and various levels of protection for the wastewater treatment facility behind it, those are all complementary initiatives. And there's little doubt that all the trail money that we've leveraged and the money that we anticipate leveraging through the environmental bond bill is going to help us reduce risks for the wastewater treatment facility. It's going to help do that without an impact to the city's ratepayers. So all of that is positive. I think there's very little doubt that we can just sort of stand still and not do anything along the shoreline, given the storms that we've experienced and given the newfound understanding of sea level rise and storm surge.
Councilor, does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Zeeb.
Mr. President, I'd also like to answer that a little bit, not as a sort of technical expert, but there are basically, four scenarios I can come up with in my head. There's a scenario where you repair the shoreline enough to build a rail trail. That's one. There's a second one where you build it enough to protect the sewer plant. There's a third protection where you build it up enough to do both. And then there's the final one, which is none of the above. You clean it up and you'll be done with it. But my point to the Ward 2 councilor, if he'll consider it, is that it doesn't matter which one of those scenarios we're talking about. We can't go to that step until we clean it up. And that's the crux of my argument is, I agree with you, but you're one step ahead, which is where we want to get to. And Jordy and I have talked about this, and we disagree. And I disagree with my committee members respectfully that it's the right thing to do to jump ahead to try and answer that question when you haven't solved the first problem. Obviously, the worst case scenario, I think, financially, because this is a financial question, is if the bond bill doesn't work out and the trails grant doesn't work out, that's probably the worst case scenario. And then you funded this design, and now you have to come back presumably for something like free cash to fund the cleanup, which again, you're on the hook for no matter what happens. A middle ground could be you get some of the grant money, but you don't get all of the grant money. And in the context of our larger discussions here about what is it we want to do in the next couple of years, you see here, this is now a $1.568 million project, right? So if you get some of it, and this is not specific to the rail trail, but this is supposed to be our job, is we have all these other things. We know they're on the radar screen, if you will. And so for me, part of this is, I have to learn more about the plant, because to be honest, I asked about this, on public utilities when we did the biofilter a couple years ago. We didn't just put $5 million into that plant, frankly, some of it right on the water without asking. And at the time, it wasn't a big concern. So I get it, things are changing quickly, but I'm not seeing I guess I'm not compelled by the benefit that, putting the cart before the horse makes this that much more attractive, especially if we're only talking about 4 or 5 months. I do have one question, Mr. President, if I may, just for Jordy. Can I just make clear about something? So are you essentially saying that you already contracted with these people based on the CPA appropriation from last November? So if we say no to this transfer, what's going to happen? You're going to break that contract, or you go as far as the money will take you, and then you'll stop?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate my position. I think the urgency here is to access that $750,000 environmental bond earmark. To do that, we need these documents done, there is a way to do this. There is a way to raise the rail trail without that bond, and it will be probably on the ratepayers for water and sewer, because at least water, because sewer we're going to have to raise it. We're going to have to protect that. So this is an opportunity to do so, and I wouldn't quite use the phrase going to the state begging for our own tax dollars, but I would say that we are in a competitive environment where there are more communities seeking funding for this sort of thing than there is funding available, and the sooner we are ready to act on it, the better off. So again, I'm going to vote yes.
Councilor Devlin.
There's a technique in legal writing. You put your strongest argument in the first sentence of a long writing, and then you repeat it at the end, and in the middle you put all the bad news that you don't want people to see or pay attention to. So I have underlined, the revised trail plans and specifications during the fall of 2019, the consultant's preliminary itemized cost estimate. So I'm assuming this is the consultant that we haven't paid them all their money yet, is for this work is approximately $1.3 million. Did Rick Tainter come to any of these meetings, to your budget and finance meeting?
No, he did not.
Because if he had, I just sat through 4 or 5 ad hoc meetings on the Waterfront West that many people were a part of. Three members of the entire Budget and Finance Committee was there. And there was serious discussion about not allowing any building on Waterfront West because of sea level rise, and that somehow 70 years from now we might be on the hook to the residents. Yet we are still going to build a, let's be fair. I mean, I've run down there all the time. This is less than maybe 0.2 of a mile of the rail trail. Overall, it's an insignificant portion, but it's about a foot above the water line. Why was it ever broached that maybe we shouldn't complete the rail trail here? Because it's monies that we're just going to be throwing underwater, frankly. I will say a little bit about the water and sewer, because we asked these questions, not only last fall, but even before then, when we were talking about the fixes to the water sewer, to the water treatment plant, is, what are we going to have to do? I was one of the people that asked the question, is this now time to consider moving the water treatment plant? And the answer was, yeah, and this was not that long ago, because I've only been on the council for 3+ years, absolutely not. But again, I'm sitting in on Waterfront West and I'm hearing, we saw one of Rick's plans that had water going all the way up to Merrimack Street. And if that happens, the water treatment plant is covered. So this also sounds like, I have not heard the argument that we need to spend money to make ourselves more attractive for grants, since really heavily since the garage. But it's an oldie but a goodie. But I'm there's another facet in here that's, again, this sounds like poor planning on a number of levels, that we're required to remove the PCBs. And I hear you that this has been in planning for 2 decades, but I would suggest that if this has been planning for 2 decades and no one ever thought to check the ground of a railroad terminus for PCBs, which are well known in the railroad industry to have leaked from locomotives because they're made for greasing moving metal parts, that nobody ever checked that in the 2 decades and said, we found out about this almost at the end of construction. That was poor planning. And to do this way is poor planning, especially now that we're throwing in another component. And I don't disagree that maybe we should build that up for the water treatment plant, but this is brand new. I have, in 3 years, 3+ years, I've never heard anybody say we have to take steps to protect the water treatment plant, and it makes sense. But if it's being thrown in as sort of, and yes, this is another byproduct, that's why we should vote for this, we should all take a breath, and we should get proposals for that, and we should study it further in committee, and find out what the cost of that's going to be, and find out whether there's an additional cost for throwing the rail trail on top of it, or whether there's some advantages just to building the revetment and not having the rail trail on top of it. So, for me, I'm not saying I'm against any of this, but it sounds like to me that this needs further study, and we should do it. Why not get it done right? Thank you.
Further discussion. Councilor Tatar.
Yeah, just to ask a question to Mr. Vining. Isn't that what you're proposing to do, is to do the engineering and the study to see if it's feasible and what it would cost? First of all. Secondly, if we determine, all right, that the wall needs to be higher, then we'll have to go out and seek further funding, but we ought to at least grab the $750,000 now while it's out there, because it may not be out there next year.
Yes, I do agree with that line of reasoning, and that's generally what we've been doing for many years in terms of investing our local funds, our local match in design and permitting and engineering work so that we can then leverage substantial federal and state funding. We've leveraged perhaps $9 million for this overall rail trail project, and the only reason we've been able to do that is because all along we've funded the design and engineering and permitting work. So as a general approach, I think that is sound, and it's proven to have brought a lot of money into the community to invest. In terms of the characterization of poor planning, I think it's poor luck.
Mr. Chair, this isn't anywhere in the connection to the question that was asked.
I agree with that. Answer the question, please. And
all right, have I answered the question?
You satisfied, Councilor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good point. Councilor Genta?
So I did go to the subcommittee meeting, so I learned a lot there about this. But I guess we're going to get back to maybe the original question here. So the $40,000 is connected with the additional CPA money to give final design. But we kind of talked about this. There's also no less than $1 million to protect the water treatment plant in the bond bill also. And the question is, are we harnessing that? This is just I'm all for this, and do the design, you attract the money, I get it. But I'm getting a little bit worried here that we aren't talking to the water treatment plant, that their needs need to be in this design too. Because that's the ultimate is, we give you $40,000 and you design something that now meets two goals. So when we're ready to go, we're ready to go. Because I'm hoping not only are we going to harness the money that's in the environmental bond bill, which is $750,000, but there's also $1 million out there to protect the water treatment plant in the same bill. So the idea is that what are we designing for? If we're going to design to attract some money, why don't we design to attract all the money? That's just my thought. And if 2 weeks gives us a chance for the other folks to come in and help us, deal with their needs, that's great. But if you feel like you've got this covered, then please let us know. I head shaking over there. If you've got this covered, please let us know.
Would the administration like to respond?
Sure. I think that as far as the timing wise, I mean, we want to unlock as much funding as possible outside of taxes and ratepayers as much as possible. I think waiting for this particular transfer I don't think the outcome will get to in 2 weeks. We're not going to have as many answers as we will going down the line while we continue doing the design work. Have those meetings with the Water Commission and work with their consultant. I think that we've already had those. We're already beginning those conversations, and we have, as mentioned, we have this meeting on Wednesday to actually talk to the Commission going forward. But I do think that the administration feels very comfortable at where we are right now, working with DPS and the engineering department as far as where they are with their resiliency study, where Jordy and his department is with. Going forward with the design of the rail trail with this revetment berm system. So I do think that, I don't think that in 2 weeks we'll have any more clarity as far as, I think essentially, I mean, to cut to the chase, I think we're talking about how high is this revetment going to be. I don't think in 2 weeks we'll know that, but I can tell you that we are working in step with the Water Commission through their efforts right now to figure out exactly where we land on that height of that revetment.
Councilor Zede.
Just a couple of thoughts. One is just so we're all on the same page. It's the wastewater treatment plant. If you like sewer plant better, that's fine. Just so that we're all talking about the same thing on Water Street, not the other way down towards West Newbury. But just a couple of things to add to it. One is just remember that a bond bill is an authorization for the governor to bond for 5 years. So you have some timing considerations that you should consider here. You know, we don't know, and what I've learned, at least with my experience out on the island, is that sometimes these plans have they have a date stamped on them, like a carton of milk, because things change so fast, DEP changes, whatever, you don't know. And so I'm just throwing that out there. I see anticipated award in 2019 that, okay, that would be a great case scenario, but I'm just saying, as you do your risk calculation in your head, as I'm trying to do, you consider it. I still remind you that we still have to do the cleanup. We haven't answered that question. We're also jumping ahead to the next question, but my thing would be, who is going to design, do you agree that those 4 scenarios I've outlined are the 4 scenarios? And who's going to be pricing out the option where you protect the plant but you don't build the rail trail? Who's going to argue for that? Who's going to be the one to say, let's at least get the 4 options on paper? Because that, I think, is our job. Our job is the one to say, what are our priorities? And I don't know what it is. I mean, we're talking about it like we know it's a revetment wall, but it's either going to be 7 feet or 12 feet. You could dump a whole pile of boulders down there and protect the plant, but it's not ready for a trail at all. So who is advocating for getting all the options? So we say it. And this is where I come. It's a Venn diagram, right? The wastewater treatment plant has some interests. We have some interest in the planning department on the trail. There's some nexus between those two, but there's also a lot of area on the outside where their goals may not be 100% aligned. Who's air traffic controller on that? And so if you say you want to design it once, well, what does a design look like without a trail? What does it look like only with a trail? How do you get these answers? That'd be my question.
Councilor Ackerman.
On balance, I think I'm inclined to vote for this $40,000 transfer, because I don't think I think it'll help us get to an answer. And I agree with the councilor from Ward 1 that ultimately it's going to come down to the 11 of us to decide which design do you want to fund. This is a step towards that. I heard from the mayor's chief administrative officer. In 2 weeks, you're not going to get any more information. It is a cynical thing, but I do think it's probably correct that, and it is an old reliable argument. If we spend this $40,000, maybe we can, bait the hook and get our $750. But just to put my cards on the table, I care a lot more about the wastewater treatment plant than I do about how nice the experience is on the rail trail. So when you come back for CPC money in the summer, that's where my head's going to be again. Do I really want to spend CPC money to beautify the rail trail? It's just not as important to me. But I was the former chair, very briefly, for a couple years of the Public Utilities, the Public Utilities Committee. I don't see, I think we already know the answer, there's not enough money on earth to relocate that wastewater treatment plant. It's not going to be relocated, it's there. So even if we hadn't just poured all this money into it, we can't move it. And where would you put it? And you'd have to do pumps, and anyway, that's not going to happen. So I'm going to vote for this $40,000, but I just want to be clear with staff and my colleagues. I'm interested in protecting the wastewater treatment plant first, everything else second.
Thank you, Councilor.
I'd like to call the question, Mr. President.
I had my hand up.
I believe Councilor Devlin's hand was in the air first.
Yeah, let me clarify. That was not, my comment about the 2 decades of planning was not a knock on you or your office and your efforts. You have done a good job. I do feel reliable, comfortable when you come up and brief us. It became the sort of, I don't want that to leave that as the focus of my comments. Just sometimes you can plan something for so long and be so invested in it mentally that we never look at it. Is 90% of what we had always wanted enough? And that's my main thrust of this as well, which is, I don't know if there's been any discussion about do we really need to finish the rail trail, or from Joppa Park down to the Starboard Galley, walking along the sidewalk, is that enough? And the rail trails both ways are very scenic and lovely to walk on. I don't think it diminishes and kind of sends people through the neighborhoods, which is also lovely. We have very historic homes in that area. So that was my main focus. So I just wanted to clarify that, so you didn't feel like you had to defend yourself either.
Thank you, councilors. Is there a move?
I think it's on its own, it's going to resolve here, so.
If there's no further discussion, I'm going to ask the clerk for a roll call on this.
The roll call on approval of transfer 39. Councilor Tantar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
No.
Councilor Devlin?
No.
Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien?
No.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
3 noes, measure passes.
Thank you, councilors. Anything else, council?
Motion to remove order number 88, multiple trust gift acceptance.
Moved and seconded to take out of committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's out. Would you like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilor Tantar.
Yes, this was a 3-0 vote out of committee to accept these gifts from the Evelyn B. Stickney Trust, the Nancy V. Weir Living Trust, and the Josephine and Nora Connors Scholarship Trust. And the committee, and I'm sure the council as a whole, is grateful for these generous gifts. Thank you.
Discussion.
Just very briefly, unless my memory is incorrect, there was an amendment in committee to strike "and any future distributions" from the 3 of them. So we're accepting this gift, and we would be thrilled to accept more gifts, but we would do so through this process in the future, just to keep things transparent. I believe that was a 3-0 vote on the amendment, and then it came out 3-0 as amended. The chair will correct me if I'm wrong.
And the chair can provide that amendment to the clerk for the record.
Could you give me that?
For the Stickney Trust and the Connors Scholarship Trust, both had indicated an amount and the following phrase, and any future distributions from the trust, and we took that out. Even though future distributions are anticipated, we felt it wasn't really necessary.
So, in other words, the amount would be 24,000, the rest of that sentence would be struck.
Gone, stricken.
Same with amount 5,000.
Stricken.
Thank you.
Good catch, Councilman.
Yeah, thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anything else in budget and finance?
We are done. Thank you.
Thank you. Education.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a meeting announcement. We'll be meeting Monday, March 4th at 5:30 at the Senior Center with our friends from the school committee. Everybody's welcome.
Thank you. General government. The report's going to be delivered tonight by Councilor Vogel.
Motion to remove Communication 109.
Second.
Moved and seconded to remove Communication 109 from committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's out.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilor Tantar. Councilor discussion. Councilor Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on General Government met, and we considered the calendar and all of its components. And a lot of this, if not all of it, is non-discretionary. So we voted, it was 2 in favor, and we encourage you to vote for it.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, councilors. License and permits.
Motion to remove Communication 100 vehicle license, Class 2 vehicle license sales RL3.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilor
Either one.
Vogel. Okay, wasn't sure who got it. All those in favor of taking this out of committee say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's out.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councilor Earls.
License and permit voted on this, unanimously approving this reapplication pending the confirmation of the bond. Just a confirmation.
Very well. Further discussion. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's done. Anything else from license and permits?
Motion to remove Communication 110 for tax application.
Second.
Second by Councilor Zede, I believe. All those in favor of removing this from committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's out.
Motion approved.
Second.
Moved and seconded this time by Councilor Tantar. Councilor Earls.
Again, license permit met and unanimously voted to approve this reapplication, and all these certifications seem to be in order, again, pending the insurance.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's done. I think that's it. Anything else?
That'll be all.
Neighborhood and city services.
Nothing tonight.
Planning and development.
Nothing tonight.
Public safety.
Nothing tonight.
Utilities.
Nothing tonight.
Rules.
Nothing tonight.
Good of the order.
Motion to adjourn.
Hearing none. Is there a movement to adjourn?
I just said it. Motion to adjourn.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're done.